platform for your perusal, by all means I will. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go and take evidence from 2 other texts to answer the part B of that question. Okay? So this is where the improv thing comes in. Now, Jonathan, again, I've already explained on a number of occasions what the general vision of viewpoint is, but I will again explain it. It is the perception of human existence taken from or presented in a text. So, in other words, if you read a text and you find that it's full of people who are cruel and selfish and who mistreat those who are vulnerable, that would create a negative sense of human nature and human experience, and that's a negative general vision of viewpoint. If the text does have such characters, but those characters are challenged by, or in the case of, say, something like Shawshank Redemption, ultimately undone by other characters who are decent and generous and kind, well, then that has an impact on the general vision of viewpoint in a positive sense. So in other words, does reading the text, by the time you get to the end of the text, does it overall make you feel kind of positive about life and about human experience and about the way people are, or does it leave you with a kind of a negative sense? Most texts will contain both elements, and your job is to come up with your sense of, is it overly pessimistic, overly optimistic? Is it generally those things, or is it a balance of the two? That's what general vision of viewpoint is. And again, it is, for me, along with literary genre, a very easy mode to write about in the Leaving Cert. But again, you'll choose which mode you want to write about. Now, here we go. Here's the improvised part, and I'm not doing too bad on the time management. So that's the idea of how to deal with one text. So it asked about individuals, and it asked about resilience. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you, so Jonathan, I'm going to ask you to decide which question I'm going to write the improvised paragraph to first. So do you want to go to 2025, Jonathan, 2023, or 2022? So 2025 was the climax question. 2023 was the kindness and compassion question. 2 was the resilience question. Which one? Yes. So Dylan, yes. Now, and I will talk about small things like these in a few moments, Dylan, okay? But yes, exactly. So the fact that there's an institution that the society is fully aware of, and the society, remember I said it in the Banshees of Inisherin, that when people learn that the guard is abusing his son, that they turn a blind eye because he's got power. The same thing in small things like these. The people in the community know that these girls are being mistreated, and think about what happens at the end of small things like these when the main character walks through the town with the girl, her name is Sarah Redmond, that he takes from the monastery. People ignore him. He knows that he's going to be ostracized by the community, and that's a depressing insight into how cruel and unfeeling and selfish and bigoted and prejudiced human beings can be, and that certainly impacts upon the general vision of viewpoint. Now, how you make that work with the particulars of a wording of a question, that's the trick. So Jonathan's got for 2025. Okay, so let's go. Now I'm just going to, you'll have to bear with me for 1 second. So I will take, yeah, copy, and there we go. Yep. So we're going to look at the 2025 question, part B. Perfect. No, it's not going to let me. Yes, it is. Ideal. And I'll just try to. Oh yeah, I'm getting good at this, folks. I'm getting good at it. No, that'll do. So in the case of 2 other texts on your comparative course, compare the extent to which the climax in each of these texts is overly influential in shaping the reader's perception of the general vision of viewpoint. Now again, because sometimes I presume you understand things. So you see the way here it says, the extent to which, see those words? The extent to which. That means that you can say it doesn't impact or change my sense of the general vision viewpoint at all. It means you can say it completely changed my sense of the general vision viewpoint. Or you can say it impacted, but only slightly. So you're allowed to choose. Now here we go. You ready? I'm sorry about this now. That's taken me a while to get here. But here, as I said, I'm going to start off. What did I say I was going to start off with? Sive and did I say the crucible? I think I did say Sive and the crucible. So, because obviously if I'm doing, no, come on. Is that frozen now? I think it's after freezing on me. Hopefully it's still there. It is still there. Can I go in? Yes. So remember, you can write, why is that doing that now? Sorry, folks. Now, for some reason, it is freezing on me when I'm trying to write inside it. So let's get the text going here. Okay. So select the text. Right? You can do it like this. Now, if I make mistakes as I type, just bear with me because I'll always reread my work, okay? After I've done it. But I want to go through this relatively quickly. Now, don't forget, stay with me here because I will be talking about this. If you're not doing this text, because this is about how you write the answers, okay? Now, so first of all, I need to know what texts you're studying. Remember I showed you at the start the 36 different texts? So again, I need to know what text you're studying. You can give the information as I've just given it there. Or you can do it in like a sentence. In order to answer this question, I'm going to discuss Sive and the crucible. But you have to tell me the name of the text, the abbreviation if you intend to use it, and the author. I like it when a student, wouldn't mean to do that. I like it when a student identifies the genre of the text as well. Just so happens that these two are two plays because they were on the list that was called out at the start. Okay, so some of you might be doing Sive, some of you might be doing the crucible. What I'm going to try and do in the time I have is write at least 2 sample paragraphs on 2 different questions talking about how to use the texts. So this question is on the climax. Now, if we go to, and this is, I'm going to show you how to use the notes, right? So if we go to Sive, I have the Sive note here, okay? Now, don't forget, this note is on the platform if you're studying Sive. And you might not have gotten to it yet because you're busy. You've got loads of things on. This note is on the platform, right? So I'm going to go straight away down to the end of the note where we get the information about what happens at the end to Sive, okay? And I'm just going to read what it says. That ending, just watching Sive being pushed backwards further and further into a corner to a point where she can see no possibility of escape. The scheme to save her, concocted by Liam, Nana, Pats and Cartelon, is desperate and doomed to fail. When Thomasine finds the letter and burns it in the fire, hope accompanies the smoke up the chimney. Sive is left utterly powerless and driven to suicide. It really is a remarkable scene and is worth looking at again. So I wrote those words. I think that reads okay, doesn't it? And then we have the the extract. And what I'm going to do is take out a little bit of a quote from the extract, okay? So I'm going to take this part. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to drop it in here. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to take this part here where he says, talking to Mina, you killed her. You killed her. You horrible, filthy bitch. That the hand of Jesus may strike you dead where you stand. You heartless wretch that hunted the poor little girl to her grave. Now, if I'm doing, I'll do it like this because it'll let me. If I'm doing Sive, my name is Paul. You don't have to do what I do. I don't like pineapples on pizza. You might like them. If I'm doing Sive, I know that quote. I know that quote from my Leaving Cert if I'm doing Sive, and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm going to throw that in here as well. And this is the study. This is the work that we do in preparation. Did I copy that? Please tell me I did. Yes, I did. Right, now. So now I'm going to go to the Crucible. And again, some of you might be studying the Crucible. Sorry for jumping back and forward now. I know it's annoying you. And I'm going to find my Crucible note. And I'm going to have a look at how the Crucible ends. And if you've studied the Crucible, you know that the play is built around the story of John Proctor and Abigail Williams. And you know that John Proctor is a very, very, very complicated, not very likable central protagonist. But you'll know that at the end of the film, John Proctor dies. And there's a moment when he says, have a look here. I'll just read this note. However, he recoils from his decision when he learns that a condition of his pardon, so he's going to be pardoned, and if you're studying the text, you know what I mean, is to have his confession nailed to the church door. His objection is not due to personal pride, but rather due to the belief that such a confession would be an insult to those poor souls who have been executed before him and who refuse to confess, should be refused. His nobility and sense of injustice is evident when he says, I have confessed myself. Is there no good penitence but it be public? God does not need my name nailed upon the church. I am not worth the dust on the feet of them that hang. How may I live without my name? I have given you my soul. Leave me my name. Now, I'm going to mark that bit. And again, I apologise if you're all switched. There's probably nobody else left on the call now because you're bored by this. And I'm going to throw that in here. And that's all I'm going to take from the Crucible. And I now have the ingredients to write a really, really interesting point in response to the question about the climax of, and I'm going to talk about the endings as the climax of these texts, and about how the endings are tragic, and about how that tragedy does certainly impact upon my sense of the general vision and viewpoint. And I'm going to talk about whether it's overly influential or whether it's actually just reflects or mirrors or reinforces the sense I already had. So that's what I have to do when I'm writing. And I have to have a formula for writing these paragraphs. And this is the thing that last week, and I know we're an hour into this class and I'm only getting to it now. This is the thing that last week I don't think I got across properly. The process for writing these paragraphs. Now, I'm going to write a couple of things here and I hope it makes some sense. Sorry, I'm just going to, so go bold, no. Sorry, come on, there we go. So I'm going to make this point and I'm going to take an A-B structure. And in part A, I'm going to offer evidence of learning, and I'm going to refer to the question. I'm also going to make sure I make at least one comparison between the texts. And I'm going to ref the Q. But I'm not going to write load. Remember I showed you already with the branches of the example? I'm not going to write loads of explanation because it'll make the paragraph too long. Part B is going to be where I add in my contextualization. And part A will come in somewhere around 120 words, hopefully around that. And part B will come in somewhere around 50 to 60 words. So I've got over this particular part of the text, of my answer, I'm coming in at somewhere around 200 words. Okay, so that's my aim here. And again, I'll talk about what the structure would be then following that when I get this done. So really, please, 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 I don't think anybody's left. I don't think anybody's left in the call. I'm really, really sorry. But I'm going to write it now and I've got my prep done. Now, you see the way I've gone into the text and I've got my key moments and I've got my quotes. The idea would be that, again, somebody mentioned about being a H1 candidate. I've often said, like, and I hope you, if you're a H1 candidate, you find this. So ref to Q means question, sorry. Yeah, reference to the question. So the idea is that when you get into the exam, see the evidence I went and found, because I'm thinking about 36 different texts because I'm here. I'm on this side of the screen. You're only thinking about 2 or 3 texts, but that you will have those texts really well prepared. So those moments are in your head. That you don't have to use quotation, but I think the quotation is really important. It adds to the quality. But once you're able to talk about the text in a knowledgeable way, you're going to score well. Okay, great. Thank you very much for proof of life. Okay, now, so let me show you how I would go about doing it. Okay, and remember, this works no matter what mode you're doing, no matter what text you're doing. Now, I'm going to write here, so apologies. This is going to be quiet for about 2 minutes. When I write, the watch and the ring have to come off. I don't know why, but they do. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm just going to have a little word with myself and remember what Sive's surname is. I should know it. I can't remember. Just give me a second. I know you know already. As soon as I see it, I'm going to go mad. It is Glavin. Glavin. How could I not remember that? Yeah. So hopefully you're still with me. So when I look at that, right, here, I'll put it all on the one page so we can see it. Well, okay. So here in this, Heidi, I'm going to come to that question in a second, okay? Here in this paragraph, I've got a very clear topic sentence. I'm on the endings of the novel, of the stories, right? And I'm saying they're tragic. And tragic is relevant to the gender vision of viewpoint. Going back to the question that was asked by, just give me a second, Jonathan. If there's tragedy, Jonathan, if good people like Sive are driven to suicide, then that is certainly something which is both tragic and presents a negative sense of human nature or of human experience, right? That the world is a cruel place where innocents are crushed by the indifference or the malevolence of other people, right? So that's negative gender vision of viewpoint. Okay. Then I've got a little bit of context, because what I'm doing is I'm making sure that I am on the question, that I can't be accused of not being on the question. So I'm saying, for me, the ending, that's and the climax of these texts, that's the same thing. And I'm able to talk about, use words like protagonist, which shows good preparation, and then Sive Glavin and John Proctor. You didn't have to use Sive's surname, but I like that detail. Especially if you're going to say John Proctor, it's good if you knew Sive's surname as well. And then what you've got is, let's count the full stops here. You've got a section, and remember it said in the marking scheme instructions, it said that the student should demonstrate decent knowledge of the text and key moments in the text. You've got a section there where I'm really showing I know this play well, this key moment. And I've got, how many sentences have I written? So let's read it. Sive is driven to suicide by a combination of the unrelenting pressure placed on her by her Aunt Mina and the inability of decent people like her grandmother and Cartelon, I could have said Pat Spocock, either of them, to help her. There's one sentence. The moment Liam Scoob enters carrying Sive's body is moving, and his words of condemnation for Mina are searing. Searing means like he's vicious in his words, in his condemnation of her. And he said, and I give the quote, "You heartless wretch that hunted the poor little girl to her grave." Now, that's just 2 sentences. Jesus, sounds like somebody's trying to land a helicopter on my house here. Sorry. That's just 2 sentences. Sorry, no. There we go. And I'm not going to write any more about Sive for the moment, because I'm being told to compare. The question says, in the case of 2 other texts in your comparative course, compare the extent to which, and so on and so forth. Now, Heidi's asked the question, does including that quote make that paragraph better? I think it does. And I've said this before in class. I always think, all other things being equal. So if you're looking at a passage and you're going, okay, an answer, you're going to go, am I going to give this, a score that's going to be, I think in comparative, just let me see first, I have to do the maths here because it's been a while. Let me see. So if I'm going to give this a score, say, of 36 out of 40, then yeah, so it's 9, 9, no, it's 12, 12, 12, and 4. Yeah, sorry, I'm just working out PCLM. If I'm going to give this a score of, say, 11 or 12 even out of 12 for purpose, the fact that you're able to back it up with quotation, that might be something which tips me to give it 11 rather than 10, because 10 you're going to probably get a H2, whereas if you get 11 or 12 for purpose, you're in the game for getting a H1. So I'm not saying that you have to use quotation. I'm saying that, hello, my name is Paul, and I think that the very best answers do contain some evidence of quote in the form of quotation, because those students have worked really, really hard. But there's no point in knowing quotes if you can't use them properly. So just because you've learned a few quotes doesn't mean you're safe, but it does mean that the quality of your work can be enhanced if all the other things are in place. Okay. Hope I'm making sense. So I've done that now. So I've talked about Sive, and now I'm going to go and use one of these famous comparative phrases. And here I'm going to change the color of my pen. And what I've done there is I've shown that I'm a good student because I've been told to compare, and I'm not writing at length on one text. I've mentioned something about the ending of text one, and now I'm going to talk about the ending of text two, and I'm going to say that in this case, I could say they're different, but in this case, I'm going to say that they have that they're very similar. I'm saying powerfully reminiscent because I've learned the general vision of the comparative vocabulary. Powerfully reminiscent, or reminiscent means, is very like, reminds me of, similar to. Uh, 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 um, um, it's one of those phrases that on the list of, I've got a list of words on the mind map that will help you compare your texts. So now I go in and I'm across and I'm into text two, and text two is TC, the Crucible. And now I'm going to pop my little quote in here. How may I live without my name? I give my soul, leave me my name. Where's the exclamation mark, Paul? There it is there. Now, how am I doing with time? Not doing too bad, right? So again, just look at the structure. Look at the structure. So topic sentence, a little bit of question facing commentary in the blue, then 2 sentences on Sive, showing my knowledge of that key moment. Then a comparative link phrase. This is reminiscent of into my second text. And then how many sentences of information on my second text? Let's count them. In that text, John Proctor is executed by the powers in Salem, even though they know he is innocent of witchcraft. 1. The climax of his story, I'm going to mark that word because it's a key word in the question, is tragic because he could not bring himself to confess in order to save his life. 2. His dilemma is captured in a memorable example of dialogue when he exclaims, "How may I live without my name? I have given my soul, leave me my name." 3. So I'm never writing more than 5 sentences on one text without referring either to another text in a compare instruction question or to the question. So I don't need you, and you saw it when we looked at it. I hope this is going okay. Are we following this okay? I don't need you to tell me like the whole story of the text. It says that in the marking schemes. It says it. What I need you to be able to do is reach into the text and pick out key moments, and perhaps if you think it's a good idea and you can make your own mind up, I'm just showing you ideas, quotations from those key moments, which will help you demonstrate learning of the text. So when you look at that, and then a little at the end, a little bit of question facing commentary. We'll go grey there at the end, right? Now, if I look at that paragraph, now I probably won't be able to do this, but I'm going to try. If I look at that paragraph is going to be longer. Does it say the word count there? Can you see it anywhere? How many words that is? I can't see it. Maybe you can see it on the screen. Is there a tool I can use? Oh, I can't see it. That's very annoying. I can see it when I'm on my laptop. Yeah, that's it, Dylan. You need to keep your paragraphs controlled, but that paragraph there, oh, it says it there, right? It says it there, right? Did it say? 200 words. So I've got 200 words and I've hardly written about either text. So the paragraphs can get long. Now, if I then try to add in, because this is the last bit there, the grey bit there is in sufficient commentary. If I try now to add in 50 or 60 words of commentary, the paragraph's going to be far too long. 200 words is about, it's your kind of, it's my rough cut-off point, because for most people, that's about 3/4 of a page of the booklet. And anything longer than that, sometimes the paragraphs can get out of control. That's a good paragraph. It's question-facing, it demonstrates understanding of the mode, it demonstrates learning, and it's comparing. So I now need to develop why these moments are, why it's incorrect to say that these moments are over-influential. And this is what allows me to write my shorter Part B contextualization. Remember in the market scheme it said that you give your interaction with the text your opinion. So here's my opinion, okay? I'm going to have a brain fart now. What's her name? Give me 1 second. Can't believe I can't remember. Crucible, the Crucible. Abigail. Well, I don't need to look. It's Abigail. Now, I know I've gone on a bit long there. Now, one comparison per paragraph, Sophia. One. I know I've gone on a bit long there, but it's the reason I've gone on a bit long there is because this is the bit that will get you your H1. Whoever's talking about H1s, right? This is the bit that will get you your H1. This is called critical thinking. It is called analysis. It is thoughtful, informed critique of the text that you've studied while maintaining a comparative spirit in the light of the question. Just watch this, right? Now, these texts, I'm going to mark the following words, okay? Sorry. So I'm going to mark that word. I'm going to mark that word. Or, do you know what I'll do? Are similar. I won't make them all red because they present deeply pessimistic perspectives on human behavior and experience. That's the feckin' general vision and viewpoint. I hope you get it now. I can't remember who asked about it a moment ago. Andrew, was it? John and Sive are brought to these tragic moments because of the abuse of power of those in authority over them. In Sive's case, that is her Uncle Mike and his wife. In John's case, it is the religious authorities in his community. Each text also portrays selfish, manipulative people, Abigail and Thomasine, who represent the worst of humanity. The stories are told in these plays are bleak and depressing. So that tragic climaxes merely reinforce, and this is really, really, really important, the tragic climaxes merely reinforce my pessimistic sense of the general vision and viewpoint. Now, lads, you look at what I've done there. I've developed 1 point. And in fact, that 1 point, that bit of commentary is 100 words. So I have written 300 words built around 1 moment from each text. And it just so happened to fit with the question that came up in 2025, that both these texts, their climax moments are the way they end in terms of the deaths of the 2 individuals. But in each text, I've only given, what did I say, 2 sentences and 1 quote on Sive, and 3 sentences and 1 quote from The Crucible. I don't have to do a huge amount of summarizing. But what I do have to do is really comment on how the information I'm giving is relevant to the question. And if you look at what I've just done in that context paragraph, the part B paragraph, I've mentioned the other two parts of my plan. So my next paragraph will talk about the abuse of power by Uncle Mike and Mina and the religious authorities in Salem. And then the paragraph after that, or the point after that, will be about the presence of characters earlier in the play. Thomasine Sean Rua in Sive and Abigail, is it Abigail Williams? I'm pretty sure it is, in The Crucible, and how their behaviour created a sense of pessimism that was merely reinforced by the tragic climaxes, that the abuse of power created an already extant sense of, a depressing view of human behaviour that was merely mirrored by the ending. So I'm coming back all the time to the question, but I'm building my essay, my response around three elements. The ending, because that's in the question, the behaviours of, and the I was going to say reprehensible, the less than noble behaviours of other characters. Now, again, Isabel, right? So just work it out. This is a 40-mark question. Now, if I was doing all three texts, Isabel, that analysis would be up to 350 words, because I'll be integrating a third text. Now, this question is part B, so I'm writing about 2. So my absolute certain guarantee to you is, if you develop 3 points like that, with a brief introduction and a brief conclusion, you're going to have a top-notch comparative essay. That's what I was trying to explain in last week's class, but I got rushed. And I hope I haven't made a balls over here today, but I hope you're understanding. That's the structure that I've outlined on the mind maps. Part A and Part B. And what you're doing is, no, Erin, don't do that. Don't relate it to your life. That's paper 1, okay? There is an element of personal response, especially in writing about the general vision of viewpoint and the literary genre. The general vision of viewpoint is your view of humanity and the human experience as presented in a text, or that you take from reading a text. So you're going to say something is bleak, depressing, tragic, uplifting, rewarding, whatever, right? That's personal response. But you don't then link it back to, because if I was in that situation, because that's wandering off the point. So you're just simply giving the examples and explaining how those examples impact upon your sense of the general vision of viewpoint. Does that make sense? Now, I said I was going to do 2 examples, but typical flippin' Paul, I've feckin' run out of time. Caitlin, again, that's a great point, Caitlin. And yes, you could. I remember we said earlier on, because somebody asked the question, there can be multiple moments of climax in a text, and the examiner doesn't. Can I tell you a secret? I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this, right? It is absolutely possible that the person correcting your Leaving Cert does not have a very strong and detailed knowledge of all of your texts. I read all the texts and watch all the films, and I write detailed notes on all of them, because that's my job here. Because all you guys are on this text and you are on this call, and there's thousands of students who are now on the Grind 360 platform, which I'm very pleased with, because hopefully you're finding it useful. So you're all doing different texts. So the examiner doesn't have to know the specific details of, say, notes on a coma, or notes from a coma, or trying to think, Young Skins or Dracula, in order to understand, or in order to see that you're engaging with the question and that you're comparing all along. So your knowledge of the text, as I said at the beginning, doesn't have to be, no, Sophia, it doesn't have to be chronological. In this particular question, they asked you about the climax. So I decided here I'd start with the climax moments, which I said are at the end. But you could have started and say, well, at the beginning, this is where my general vision of viewpoint, my sense of general vision of viewpoint was. Then this happened, and that reinforced or began to change my sense of general vision of viewpoint. And then the climax moments, were not overly influential because they simply were consistent with what I got so far, or they were overly influential because I did change my sense of the general vision viewpoint. So you can go like that. It doesn't matter what order you go in. What matters is, now remember I said at the start, no problem. Remember I said at the start, the key thing is to have a way of writing the paragraphs. Now what I'm if I can be immodest here, I'm pleased with myself because that's what I've done here, what I intended to do. I've done here, what I've done here is I've shown you my approach to writing comparative answers when you have to compare. Now, so Connor, if you mean like give the example and then contextualize afterwards, 100%. Sure, Connor, you could do this. Look, watch this. If you wanted to, you could write a short topic sentence and then your example from text one, then a sub paragraph in which you give your link phrase and your example from text two and your ref to Q, and then a second sub paragraph in which you contextualize. Of course you can. The crucial thing is, remember I keep on talking about, guys, my Rick rules, right? My Rick rules. So you have an hour to write your comparative essay, Kira, great question. No, Isabel, you can choose, again, if you look at what we said at the marketing scheme, you can choose to go straight into the climax moments and then write around them, or you can build up to them. It's up to you. There's no, as it said, the exam said there's a number, expect a variety of approaches to the task. So as long as you, I think your question, Isabel, has brought me to where I want to be. As long as what you're, ask yourself, right? So that question was, in the case, in the case, sometimes I think there's somebody messing with me here. Don't do it again. In the case of two other texts on your comparative course, compare the extent to which the climax in each of these texts is over influential in shaping a reader's perception of the general vision and viewpoint. Now, ask yourself, in that section of that answer, have I done that? And if the fact is that I absolutely 100% have, because everything I've written is relevant to the question under discussion, informed by my knowledge of the texts, written in language which is clear, properly punctuated, and easy to read, and I have worked hard to try to contextualize and explain my points. So that's what my Rick rules are. When I read back, and I never read back something I've written and go, oh, that's great. But I know by the standards of the Leaving Cert that we're looking for purposeful work which is presented in a coherent way, where the language is clear and there are very few mechanical errors. That little response there is a good example of that, but it's also a way now that you have of, okay, I can see how I'd write my comparative essays. Now, your teacher might have a slightly different approach, but as I said, as I began this class, you now have a process you can adapt. And the other purpose of this class was to show you and encourage you to read the feckin' notes that I've written for you. I really need you to read them. They're on the platform. As I said, what did we say? Young Skins. I said I'd put together, I'll throw together a little document on Macbeth, even though there's tons of stuff on Macbeth already on the platform, tons of stuff. But just in the light of the comparative. And then the other one was Grand Budapest Hotel. So by the time midterm's over, I'll have those three up, right? That's the next 3 weeks. So like, and that then brings us up to, I think, 31 of the 36 texts. So, and then if somebody says I'm doing something else, then I'll do the note on that. But the point I'm trying to make is, for most of you, either two or all three of the texts you're studying, I've already done them. Read those notes, and when you're writing your comparative answers, have those notes open so you can mine them for useful information. The way I mined those documents to write those answers. I'm knackered now. How was that? Is that okay? Does that make sense? I hope it made some sense. And by the way, yes, I will, before you ask, I will format that and I will pop that document up on the platform if you think it might be useful for me to do that. Sive, remember this. Anybody who tells you it's easier to get a H1 by doing the standalone 70 mark essay, or anybody who tells you it's easier to get a H1 by doing the 30-40 structure essay, that person is lying to you. The fact is that some years the wording of the 70 mark essay will suit you more in your particular mode. So whatever one you want to answer, cultural context, literary genre, general vision and viewpoint. The wording of the A-B structure question might not fit with your preparation, but the 70 mark one will. And equally in a different year, the wording of the 70 mark one won't and the A-B one will. That's why I said at the start, if you're going for a H1, I would advise you to do 3 texts, but you don't have to. But you're limiting your choices. It's not because you're going to be marked down for only doing 2 texts. That's absolutely not the case. You will not be marked down. If your answer is excellent, you can get 70 marks out of 70 for doing 2 texts, but you're taking a gamble because it may be that year the question they asked in the 70 mark is a bit tricky for your preparation, doesn't fit with you. You can't see on the day how it works for you, whereas the A-B one would have been perfect, but you can't answer it because you haven't got a 3rd text. So as I say, what does Rick stand for? Sorry, Kira, I'm just tired, but I've said it a few times. So, and again, I'm sure it's in loads of documents. So my rule of thumb when I'm writing, Kira, is my paragraph or is my analysis relevant? That means, am I on the question? So that's purpose. Informed. So the I is relevant is the or. I is informed. In other words, have I put some evidence in support of my quote? You don't need to put loads of evidence in, some evidence. Clear. So am I, do you know when I was writing, I was going a bit slow because I was trying to make sure my punctuation was correct. My, spelling is not, my expression, my sentence structure, my syntax, that's the word I was trying to look for. That's the tiredness. It flows. And then the second C is that part there. See that part there, Kira? These texts are similar. Down as far as vision and viewpoint, that's called contextualization. That's the bit where you're doing the critical thinking, explaining why the information you've given is particularly relevant to the question. And one last thing, because I forgot to say, why did I mark these texts similar, they, and, these, in Saib's case, in John's case, each, and, stories? Why did I do that? Because in that contextualization paragraph, I'm using loads of comparative language because the instruction is to compare. So I'm writing about the texts not as separate units, but as one discussion. And I am comparing, and I can't be accused of not comparing. The instruction verb in the 70 mark question and the instruction verb in the 40 mark part B question is always compare. If you fail to do that, you're on a hiding to nothing. That's the most important thing you have to do is compare. And I've compared there to a standard that would result in very, very, very high grades if I'm able to maintain it over the rest of my answer. Now, how's that? Is that okay? Useful at all? I don't know. Somebody said it was. At least one person did. Handy. Thank you very much, Kira, for saying that. Now, so was that useful? Do you think we could do? Do you think I would do more of these over? Of course, I promised somebody I was going to talk about purple hibiscus today and use it as an example. I apologize for not doing that, but I can do more classes like this, And when we do the comparative, this is what the comparative classes are going to be like. Like in the Wednesday night classes, this is what they're going to be like. There'll be a fair amount of improvisation. But anyway, the floor is now open. If you have any questions, as Sienna says, that might be a bit obtuse. Okay, so Sienna, there's multiple things going on there. First of all, in the comparative text, just be as accurate as you can, and don't worry about getting hammered for the quote being slightly wrong. They're not going to be going checking them, right? So just try and keep it as accurate as you can, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, in terms of tips for improving diction and spelling, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. You have to have the discipline to reread your work carefully. In terms of diction, you mean expression and syntax. Rereading your work out loud or having someone read your work back to you, that's a useful trick to employ. In terms of spelling, again, it's very, very difficult for me to tell. I don't know what your level of spelling is, but often you'll spot words that you kind of regularly misspell. If you have a list of words, if you get work back from your teacher, and nobody does this, but it's advice, and there's things misspellings corrected, I would take all those misspellings, I would write them down, and I would make sure that I'm aware of them when next time I'm writing, because it's often commonly misspelled words. And I'm going to say something now that's going to give you yes, yes, I'm going to be posting this. Oh, great. Thank you for the positive feedback. I'm going to say this now and going to get myself in trouble, because you won't listen to what I'm saying to you, and you'll say I said something I didn't say. So I'm going to give you a bit of context. So remember that 5th year class I was talking about that I teach in Brunner? Oh, by the way, something to be aware of. I'm going to try it and see how it goes, and if it doesn't go, I'll stop it. So students were on to me asking about learning quotation. Paul, I find learning quotation hard. I find it hard. And I was talking to a 3rd year student who I know who says they're finding quotation hard to learn. So I have, as you know, I'm sure you know, my YouTube channel that's been going for a long time, PMC Brunner. And there's loads of video content on that. Now, everything that you need is on the Grind 360 platform, but there is loads of video content on the PMC Brunner platform. And over a couple of years, I make little shorts with quotes. But the problem with YouTube is nobody watches the shorts on YouTube, unfortunately. So I have now got, and this is where my depression kicks in, a TikTok, PMC Brunner English on TikTok, where I'm going to be spending a minute to 2 minutes saying a quote from a text, a poem, Macbeth, or if you want me to do one on your particular texts, and explaining why that quote is useful and how you could use it. And then by listening back to it, listening back to me saying it, maybe that's a way that you could learn the quote. Okay, so I started that last week. I did one as an experiment, and we're going to keep on doing those as 3 or 4 times a week as the year goes on. So yeah, so anything else other than that? Oh yeah, sorry. So the thing I was going to say, get myself in trouble. If you listen to exactly what I'm going to say, this could be useful. ChatGPT is not your friend. There are loads of people who are going to increasingly do very badly in their exams because they think that ChatGPT is going to help them. Well, it doesn't. But as an English student, if you struggle with expression, ChatGPT can be useful in one particular way. And this is something that I spoke to 2 students who I have in my 5th year class who are excellent guys, really hardworking, highly intelligent. But both of them, English is not their first language. Okay? So they struggle a bit with their expression. They struggle a bit with putting down, if they were writing in their first language, they'd be flying. But this is English, so it's writing English. So what I told them to do, and they're already finding it useful, what I told them to do is, when you get work back from me, lads, or when you write a paragraph, type it exactly as you've written it into ChatGPT, exactly, and then give it the instruction. Now, this is who asked this question. I'm going to come to you, Diamond. I'm going to come to your question in a second. I didn't see that. I don't know who asked the question about diction. And just give it the instruction to parse the paragraph for you. Parse, P-A-R-S-E. Now, what that will do is it will read your paragraph and it will give you feedback on your diction, on your syntax, on your grammar. In other words, it'll tell you, okay, you said this, that sentence isn't grammatically correct. This is an alternative way you could have said it. Now, that's something, you're not getting it to do the work for you, but it's like having your own tutor at home who can break down your work word for word and give you feedback on your language. That's the only use I would make of it. One of my favorite colleagues I've ever worked with, his name is Sanjeev, said something to me that stuck in my head about ChatGPT. He said, ChatGPT is reliably unreliable. In other words, it's often wrong in what it's telling you if you check up. But that instruction to get it to parse your work, if you write it in exactly as you've written it, it will help you see where you're going wrong with expression. So that's a little piece of advice for you. I don't know whether you find that useful. So Diamond, I'll finish by answering your question. How would you compare Sive to Where the Crawdads Sing? In this kind of scenario, seeing a Sive is tragic. Now, perfect. So you're able to talk about comparison, but also difference. So Where the Crawdads Sing has loads of examples, like Sive, of really horrible human behaviour, particularly if you know the character jumping. There's a key moment. Again, read the Way the Crawdads Sing note that I've given you, Diamond, right? Read that note And there's a key moment where Jumpet's walking home and he's assaulted by these kids who are unbelievably racist, and it's depressing, right? But yeah, at the end of Where the Crawdads Sing, there is a plot twist where we kind of get a sense of it's somewhat uplifting, but it's also quite disturbing that the character Kaya, I think her name is Kaya, who we really like, turns out to be a killer who got away with it. So that would definitely influence your sense of the gender vision and viewpoint. Now, whether it does positively because you admire her because she was attacked and she survived and she showed resilience and intelligence and was able to escape punishment, that you can absolutely say that, or you can say that that you changed your view of her as a person. So you're absolutely able to compare those texts. There's no text you can't compare. I hope that makes sense. See, I have read them all, and believe me, I've read them all and I've watched them all. Okay, 1854. So I told you we were going to finish between 6, 7. So we finished between 6 and 7. Will that do? And again, I apologize if I haven't talked about your text tonight, but it wasn't really about that. It was about encouraging you to read the text that I've written for you. Use those documents to help you when you're doing your comparative work, to build your knowledge and also to find key moments and key quotes, and to have a process for writing essays. Okay, I'm going to go, and I'm again going to get myself in trouble and have a very large glass of red wine now, because that was tiring, but I really enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. I'll see some of you tomorrow night, I'm sure, for our paper 1 class. We're continuing with our analysis of question B. Thanks, folks. I'm going to say good night, and I'll see you tomorrow or on Wednesday, depending on your timetable. Cheers, boys. Bye-bye.